Welcome back, folks. This is Texas Tales, the official podcast of Texas Saltwater Fishing Magazine. I am your host, Joshua Shive, and Mr. James Cossop, my co-host, is out today. Evidently, it's that time of year that people like to file restraining orders, which is kind of weird. But ultimately, we do have another special guest today. Mr. Everett Johnson is back to continue his story from when he acquired the magazine to this point now. So really looking forward to that conversation and all the good, the bad, and the ugly of the publication business. So one thing I would like to take a note, it is Christmas time. I would like to just hope everybody really gets to talk about Jesus Christ and the birth of him and how he saved all of us ultimately, and to continue to tell that story from generation to generation so we don't lose sight of that. So if you have that opportunity, please tell the story and make sure your kids are aware and they understand it as well. So we all love Santa Claus, but ultimately the reason that this time of year exists is because of Jesus Christ. So also slow down this year. A lot of families out there, it's go, go, go. Christmas time is always very hectic. And I ask that for most of you to slow down and really enjoy the moments that you have with each other, with your loved ones, and just kind of be able to spend that quality time and decompress a little bit before back to work in the 1st of January. So thanks, everyone, and we'll be back with Everett.
You're listening to the official podcast of the Texas Saltwater Fishing Magazine, Texas Tales, with your hosts, Josh Shive and James Cossop.
All right, we are back, folks. We have Everett Johnson here with us for part 2. So we're going to pick up where we left off from last time, where Everett was putting crawfish in the fridge with his, I guess his mom, and wasn't making her too happy. But now we're at the point where, Everett, you have acquired the magazine, and I want to kind of go to that point where all that process and how that even began.
Hey, I can do that. And it's quite a story, actually. So I called it retirement. I was 48 years old. It was in the year 2000. And I started a guide business. And I didn't have it was a misnomer. I actually didn't have much business. But fellow guides helped me out and helped me get started. And, we started working it out. And little by little, I was doing pretty good. And I come up with the idea that if I could somehow get into print somewhere, um, someplace that anglers might read something that I might have to say, could be a good way to get them to call me up and say, "Hey, let's make a fishing trip together."
Now, was that
So there
specific?
was a
Now, what were you genuinely interested in the publication business, or you were thinking more, this may be a good avenue to help grow my guide service?
it's all about the guide business. So the so let's see. I contacted a guy named Gene Baker who owned a little monthly publication that he called Gulf Coast Connections. And it started life kind of as a swap sheet or a one of these I don't know what to call it, maybe a thrifty nickel type
Yep.
of, selling ads. People would say, I've got an old pickup truck for sale, tired of it sitting around. Somebody make me an offer greater than $300 and it could be yours. So it was that kind of a publication. And he would have a few, like feature length fishing stories in there, just space fillers. And I wrote a couple for him, and he seemed to like them. And next thing you know, I became kind of a regular writer. And then it became, I wasn't doing it just to fill space anymore. He was depending on me to fill space. And I was getting busy. I was doing waterfowl hunting and fishing. And it was in January. Right after the new year is always a very busy time in waterfowl hunting.
Oh yeah.
You know this, you've been there. So we had people booked, they were coming from basically all over the Gulf states and some of the Atlantic states. Dedicated duck hunters who were wanting uh, to get species that were not commonly available in their own area. So word started to get around, started to be pretty good. And I was booked up past my eyeballs because what made it so busy was I was offering the guys to stay in my house. And some of the time I was the veterinarian, the airboat mechanic, the chief cook, bottle washer, house cleaner, bed maker, flushing one crew out and getting another crew in. Oh my Lord, I used to work a lot. Now I left a great job in industry, okay, but by golly, I was gonna make it in the outdoor business. Okay, so anyway, Gene Baker calls me up one day and he says, "Hey, look here, you're 2 days late with your story. What's going on?" And I said, "Yeah, Gene, I realize that, but this group I got here have been with me 4 days. They're leaving tomorrow. I'll have a whole day off and I'll get you your story." And he said, "You dadgum fishing guides, you kill me. You think the sun is just shining all over you, and you some kind of you got all this ability to just wow all the people. But I'm here to tell you, my job's pretty tough too." And I said, "Gene Baker, I want you to know something right now. I'm chief cook, bottle washer, airboat mechanic, hunting and fishing guide. I'm doing it all, see? And honestly, if I had a broom up my butt, I could sweep the floor while I was doing everything else." And so he got a chuckle out of that. And he said, "Okay, give me the story tomorrow." And he calmed down. And then I sent the story in and I got to talking to him. And I found out that old Gene wasn't doing too well health wise. And he was actually starting to fish around for potential buyers for his little publishing business. So I told Pam, your mom, uh, I said, "Look, I found this business when you're not raising the kids, because y'all were 50% with your dad and 50% with your mom. When y'all weren't with your mom, I wanted her to be at the coast to help me with all this cooking and bottle washing,
Right.
sweeping the floor." And she said, "Well, how much money does he make?" And I said, "Actually, he makes almost identical to what your job pays you," which was a nice job. She was a buyer in an industrial company in College Station. So we got to talking about it and we looked things over. It was the beginning of the internet era. the beginning of the email era. You could communicate so simply, so easy, compares to just a couple years prior. And I said, if we wanted to take off and go fishing in the Everglades for 3 or 4 days, if you took your computer laptop with you, you could get it done right
Right.
out of the truck while we're traveling. And this opportunity has never existed before.
Right.
So I talked her into it, and we started the very first month that I paid Gene. We took possession of a little bit of equipment. I mean, he was still working with like Vic Commodore 64. And if you know anything at all about early computers, that wouldn't even load your email
Right.
program today. But we got going. We started to learn more about the publishing business. We got to know some very reputable printers. And the first month that we owned it, we added 4 pages and we added a half a dozen ads because we got out and we hustled. And a publisher, he makes all his money off advertising, basically, and subscription sales. So we got going, we worked very hard, and every month our goal was we had to have 3 or 4 new advertisers. We had to have a few more pages. We bought the thing and Gene was running 24 pages, and it was a quarter fold tabloid. What that meant was it was a newspaper. It was folded in half and then folded again, and that made it quarter folded. And that's the way it went in the mail, and we'd tape it shut. And that's the way that the advertisers would see it and the readers would see it. And we were doing it free issue, which means we made nothing for how many magazines were being read. And didn't take too long until we said, well, um, kind of hard for the Eagle to fly very high on low octane fuel. That was the way I explained it. Anyway, we got her going on single copy sales. And that's when things really started to take off. And then we wanted to differentiate ourselves from low quality tabloids. So we wanted to investigate better quality paper, finished paper. We wanted to find better stock to print on, and we did. And there was about 30 steps between where we were and where we are today. But you just keep soldiering away and you keep finding new and better and different correspondence, people to write in the publication. And I'm very proud of the job we did because there were people on every corner and said, "Oh man, you done screwed up now. You're not going to make it."
So when y'all first acquired the magazine, was there anything in particular that you saw right away where if I make some changes here, I think we can grow this fairly quickly?
Yes, exactly. And that's a good point to bring up at this stage. We needed to become associated with more reputable guides, tournament fishermen, to become our correspondents. People that don't win tournaments, people that don't have a get busy guidebook, people that aren't recognized as successful in the guide business, they're not going to get much acclaim in the paper. So we set out to fix that. And, some of the people that we jumped, we jumped in with Mickey Eastman. At the time, he owned the Gulf Coast Trout Masters Tournament Series. That was, without a doubt, it was a summer-long deal. There was about a dozen or 15 stops. They hit every major port from Sabine Lake all the way down to South Padre, Port Isabel. And they attracted a big following everywhere they went. And the guys that wanted to compete for Team of the Year, Angler of the Year, they were very dedicated to making every event. So they gained almost instant credibility. If you could win on the Troutmaster Trail, you were pretty solid. There ain't no two ways about it. There were some very, very good anglers. And we started to become associated with some of those guys, and some of them joined us in our enterprise as writers and correspondents. They would occasionally offer pieces that we might want to publish. Topics like lure selection, topics like how to read the salooner table, and how to read the weather forecast and predict with significant accuracy how the fish were going to react on tournament day. Because you can't pay, it's not always ice cream, okay? It's almost never ice cream conditions. And so they got out there and they figured out the salooner table. They figured out the weather pattern. They fished hard prior to the tournaments, located schools of better than average size fish. And there was a boat to be won at every tournament, every stop on the schedule. And then some people got the feeling like, well, I don't like to fish against a Fulton guide in his home water. So Mickey created the pro division and the amateur division. And man, that just sparked everything. Boom, it took off. They were getting, I'm pretty sure that the angler count would be like 150 amateur anglers and maybe 75 pro anglers or even more. And it was the who's who of Texas trout fishing. And Mickey's series just grew like a bamboo sprout. And, we kind of got involved with him, and we always ran pieces in what eventually became a magazine. We wanted to upgrade from tabloid stock newsprint, paper to make it look like a real magazine. Well, that meant that we had to start charging for the publication. And some people that knew a lot, they said, well, if you've been giving something away for a couple, 3 years the way you've been, what makes you think you can charge for it? And I said, well, that's something you got to let me worry about. Because if I go broke, I'm going broke. You're not. But at the same time, we're upgrading our publication and we're putting more interesting people in the writer position. And we were getting, we were growing so fast at one point that uh, we actually couldn't get everything done in time to get it published. So we had to start adding staff. And then we had to think about when the magazine comes out of the print shop, uh, what are we going to do for getting it to the stores? Who's going to haul it? Who's going to carry it out there? And that's when I come to find out that there were a lot of people who were interested in fishing and outdoor sports who had retired too early. Everybody can use a little extra money. And they were keen to help us become our distributors of the magazine. And some of the people stayed with us for a long time. One guy stayed 15 years. And that's pretty respectable for a guy that was 55, almost 60
Right.
when he joined. And we're still doing it the same old way. And we are able to uh, make a buck on the single copy sales, helps defray the publishing costs. We are able to be out on the street and get to know and meet a lot more people in the industry, participate in trade shows like Houston Fishing Show, Houston Boat Show, etc. So they were continual opportunities for growth. Now, I wore out a couple, three pickup trucks, hauling book, getting around all these trade shows, getting around meeting people. We called it a labor of love. And there were an awful lot of people interested in coming aboard to help. And they said, we've never had a publication like this in Texas. This is wonderful. And we would like to help you grow it. And so people said, well, who would you thank for the most help? And I said, probably the good Lord above for wonderful luck, great health to work hard, be able to work hard, and to continue to open doors that led to relationships with great people. And that's the honest to God's truth.
Now,
Did
when you're thinking
Go
about
ahead.
the people when you first acquired the magazine and you got hooked up with Mickey Eastman, kind of one of the ones that was in the beginning that helped you grow your audience, was there any other guides that you looked at and said, I have to get this guide in the magazine?
Well, I didn't say I had to, but there were quite a few that I would like to. And I didn't miss very many. And some of them are still with me today. And we started in 2000, and this is fixing to be 2026 in a few days. Okay. So
Was there
we
any
just,
was there any guides that you would have liked to have in the magazine, but you just couldn't never make it work?
no, we, uh, we were very blessed with a good reputation from the get-go, honest dealing, not a bunch of baloney being spewed, trying to get people involved in CCA Texas and to understand more about what Texas Parks and Wildlife are about. And we went to a thing that was called the Spotted Sea Trout Work Group meetings in 2002. And I met a guy named Hal Osborne. And Hal was the director of Coastal Fisheries Division of TPW. And one day during the meetings, I asked Hal if maybe we could go to lunch together. It wouldn't be a long discussion, but it would be an opportunity to meet and greet. And so I said, Hal, I got to tell you something, buddy. You know, you're some gifted. When I say you are, I'm talking about the whole staff of Coastal Fisheries. Hundreds of people work in that division of TPWD. So y'all are some wonderful scientists, and you are so, um, sharp, so well accomplished. You have you have accomplished some of the greatest uh, accomplishments, actually, of any wildlife management agency in the United States. You are recognized as the leaders. But I'm going to tell you, Hal, when you were at school and you were learning all those wonderful fisheries management skills, I'll be darned, they never taught you how to blow a trumpet. And he looked at me rather puzzled, and I said, you've got a wonderful story, but you keep your mouth shut. You don't brag about your accomplishment. You complain that a lot of your constituents out here in Fishland don't understand what you're doing and how hard you're working and what you're trying to accomplish. Whose fault is that? And so I talked him into writing a column, a monthly column, and I said, I will publish it. And you can tell the people out here and, your constituents how hard you're working, what you're achieving. And I went, the same thing. Kevin Daniel back then was the same position as Hal in CCA, Texas. And I said, man, you need to tell your story. You want more members, you want people to flock to you. Well, let's give them something to get excited about. And we're still doing it today. We went through Kevin Daniels. We went through, I hate when I have these dead spaces in my
Right.
thought process. Uh,
So linking up with CCA was an important aspect of the magazine because obviously
Absolutely.
uh,
Absolutely.
the conservation
And
piece is
yeah,
important.
we're on our third director over at CCA. And we have Kevin, we went from Kevin Daniel to the guy I can't remember, but I will in a minute when it's not important. And then Robbie Byers. And we're just cruising right along. CCA is doing a wonderful job. They got, I think, and I'm not taking credit for this. I think when I got to know the CCA folks, they had maybe 20,000 members, more or less. I think today they have almost 78,000. So they've put on a heck of a growth spurt and done very, very well. And there's more and more joining every day. And that's important for an organization like CCA, because they need to be adding new members all the time in order to be able to generate increasing revenue to spend on conservation projects. And maybe one of these times where we have this discussion, we can talk about the type of accomplishments they're making and how many people are contributing and what they're contributing and what impact that has had. It's the list, honestly, is that long. And it's that long every year.
Right.
So there's just an enormous contribution to things that will improve the Texas ecology of coastal Texas, help us produce more fish, help us create better environments. And that would be a worthwhile topic someday. And maybe we can even bring some of the CCA staff on to,
Absolutely.
help talk about it. And uh, I'm really fired up about them. Uh, their accomplishments are numerous, the same as TPW. The work they've done. Let me tell you that the TPW folks, uh, they pulled off a world class turnaround in the fishery in 3 years. And what I'm talking about is that big nasty freeze in, actually it was on Valentine's Day, 2021. We just come charging right out of the gate with incredible numbers and quality of projects to restore the fishery. And we are right now, I don't say this, just lightly. We are right now enjoying quite possibly the best fishery we've ever seen. And it's all about more, better regulations, more targeted toward helping grow the fishery. I never dreamed that one day we would have a 3 fish limit and so many millions of fishermen would be happy about it. But when they see what we've got and what we can go out there and catch, and the last really bad freeze we had was 89, and it took 6 or 8 years for that recovery to occur. But this one, we went after it far more aggressively. And you see what the result has been. Very impressive. So I can't say enough good about them. And I, I, with my dying breath, I will sing their praises. And what they're trying to accomplish now with oyster management and other projects we got going on. It's just phenomenal accomplishment after accomplishment. And um, when we look back at how quickly we pulled this off compared to the struggling for 8 or 9 years back in the 80s, that's when you're hitting the nail square on the head.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing where sometimes being aggressive is important because it allows for better things and better outcomes. And so when you were first starting the magazine, or I'd say acquiring magazine, and you're growing, you're adding people, and you're aggressive in your approaches with the advertisers. When you look at the advertisers that you've added, what was your what was your process there? And was there ever a moment where you didn't necessarily believe in the product, so you did not allow the advertisement to happen?
Never had a problem believing in our mission or the possibility of pulling it off. I never really doubted our ability in that category. Sometimes it took a pretty stiff upper lip, but we made it, and we've made it happen steadily. Would I like to have more advertising? Absolutely. That's where that's where the biggest piece of our income is. Would I like to have, uh, there's, I don't want to call it quality of advertising, but when you see upscale ads beginning to flow into the magazine, not just bait camps saying, hey, come buy our shrimp. Okay. But we've got people who are saying, uh, come invest hundreds of thousands of dollars in our subdivision. And people are flocking to them. People are doing very well in their own real estate development businesses for having become involved. And we want to have room for everybody. Yes, we still want to have one man making one style of plastic bait and accommodating him to our best ability. And for that very reason, we strive to keep advertising prices low, keep them reasonable. And it's important for the mom and pop advertiser to be able to flourish the same as the large business interests who are, we got a new advertiser right now that they're selling real estate down in the Corpus Christi area, North Padre Island. I mean, they're printing money, and that's wonderful. And it's important for them to recognize that we are a venue worthy of them and their advertising. And I think it's still a wonderful thing that we've got the bait shops and the Roy bait and tackle types, and the guys that um, they're sticking with you because you've always been a successful path forward. And that means that we're accomplishing pretty solid results in our in our work.
Right.
And when you come down to how well it has gone overall, I had a guy at the very first trade show that we were exhibitors. He walked up to me and he said, am I to understand that you bought this publication? Yep, I did that. And you paid good money for it? Yep. Well, where do you think that's going to get you? Well, I hope it's going to, be a wonderful ride. Have you ever sold advertising? Well, if you'll buy an ad right now, that'll be my first one. And he says, have you an education in outdoor writing? No. What makes you think you can be an outdoor writer? Hard work, plenty exercise, lots of fresh air. And To be honest with you, I've written a lot of really good business letters, and I never wrote the first business letter until I wrote the first one. And here I go. Wish me luck. Well, good luck. He said, well, then, thank you. I would like to go back to that same guy today and say, would you wish me luck one more time?
You know,
But that
one of
would,
the other things that I've noticed with advertising, and it's interesting because a lot of people advertise in the magazine to grow their business, and then a lot of larger companies, if they're acquired by corporations or different things like that. One of the things that I've also noticed is it's not only to grow your business, but it's also to stay relevant. And one of the things with the advertising is the ones who start to stray away from advertising in different publications or different areas, they tend to, that market share tends to be eaten up by the guys who are growing their businesses and advertising the right way. And so a lot of it is not just growing, but staying relevant and keeping your market share.
and part of that is remaining relevant is so important to your continued growth. We have had lots of people that tried us and they found results they never expected. And what that means is, in my opinion, that a lot of successful businessmen are fishermen. There's a lot of people who are interested, deeply interested in the angling world, and uh, they have found that sending their message out to sportsmen is very productive. And it's a market that a lot of people perhaps don't consider in the beginning. And I'm just, I'm overwhelmed actually, Josh, by some of the results. And it's been a wonderful ride. And I just hope it will continue. And it's like getting involved in this podcast thing. You used the term relevant, and this is the relevance of 2025, 2026 that would not on the radar in the least bit back in the year 2000.
Right.
So it's important for the publisher to continue to polish their presentation, come up with different ways to interest people to tune in. Um, man, I'm excited to see this thing go and grow.
Now, when is it now looking back and all the things that the accomplishments that you've had with the magazine, is there anything that you would have done different, or that if you did go back now, what you would have changed?
That's a loaded question. That's a tough one. Yeah, of course there's things I would do differently. Yeah, of course there's things I wish I hadn't said or I hadn't done. Um, but we're only as clever as God made us, or as hard as we would work to develop our cleverness or how to think quickly on our feet. Basically, what I'm going to say to that is the more you accomplish, the more you can accomplish. The harder you work, the more agile you become. And that learning the mechanics of that marketplace, there's still an awful lot to learn out there. And there's still an awful lot that I wish I could have done differently. But by the same token, man, I've had a pretty good business for 25 years. So
Yeah,
let,
it's
let's,
definitely
yeah,
it's
yeah,
definitely worked out well. And I think some
let's
of
see
the
how much further we can push it.
exactly. And I think that's the important piece is one thing with a business, it's ever changing and you have to either keep up or you get left behind. And I think for you, for the past 25 years, you've definitely been kind of at the forefront in a lot of different areas with conservation and just allowing people to have that voice and to get a lot of good names out there so people can enjoy those products and services.
For sure. I'm proud of what we've accomplished. And I wish I was more proud that we had accomplished more, but we're still plugging away at it.
That's it. Well, thank you,
Where's
Everett.
the good Lord gonna where's the good Lord gonna lead us?
That's right. Well, we really appreciate it, Everett, you being back on. And now that we've heard the full story from since you were a kid to this point, next time we're going to dive into some of the current events and really pick your brain to where now we can have some exciting conversations about what's going on in the fishing industry and around the world. So appreciate you having you on and appreciate you joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity. And I look forward to the next one.